Welcome to the Explainer. Look, today we're doing more than just prepping for a test. We're actually building your ethical compass. We're going to break down the key principles you absolutely have to master, not just for the SAFE exam, but for a long, successful career as a mortgage loan originator.
So what is the difference? It's a huge question, right? Well, the answer, it's all about really understanding the rules. These regulations, they're not just there to make your life difficult. They're designed to protect people, to protect consumers, and to keep our entire financial system honest. It's about going from just knowing the law to, living and breathing it.
And that brings us to the SA Act. This is really our starting point. You got to remember, this whole thing was born out of the 2007 financial crisis. Its entire reason for being was to restore trust and bring some professionalism back by setting up clear, minimum standards for MLOs everywhere. So yeah, think of it as the bedrock, the foundation for everything you'll do ethically in your career.
All right, so to get our heads around all this, we're going to walk through 4 key pillars of ethical conduct. And trust me, every single one is packed with stuff that is absolutely critical for the exam. So, you ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, pillar number 1, truth in communication. This is all about being clear and honest. It really boils down to transparency. From the very first ad a client might see, all the way to the final papers they sign. What you say and how you say it. It matters a lot. This is literally where trust starts. So let's talk about TILA, the Truth in Lending Act. It gives us this really important idea called a trigger term. Basically, if you put a specific credit term in an ad, we're talking things like the down payment amount, how many payments there are, or the finance charge. If you mention one of those, you've just triggered a requirement for more info. It's like you can't just say the good part, you have to tell the whole story.
And this is that whole story I was talking about. Once you use a trigger term, you have to include these things too: the down payment, the repayment terms, and the APR. And I'm not kidding. Forgetting even one of these isn't just some small oopsie, it's a huge compliance problem. It's a total breakdown of transparency.
This comparison really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? On one side, you've got a compliant ad. It's honest. It lays out the real deal. On the other side, you've got this bait and switch. And that's where you advertise some amazing loan term that, let's be real, isn't actually available, just to lure people in. That's not just shady, it's flat out illegal.
All right, let's build on that with our second pillar, the mandate for fairness. Look, being truthful is where it starts, but being fair, that's the absolute heart of ethical lending. It's about making sure every single person who walks through your door is treated equitably. It's non-negotiable.
And the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, ECOA, makes this crystal clear. You see this list? Race, color, religion, national origin, and so on. These are the protected classes. Your job is to burn this list into your brain, because these factors can never, ever play a role in a credit decision. End of story.
And because of ECOA, there are some questions you just can't ask. Things like, are you planning on having kids? Or asking if an applicant is divorced. Why? Well, think about it. None of that has anything to do with whether someone can pay back a loan. It's irrelevant. And asking those questions crosses a line into potential discrimination, which the law says is a huge no-go.
Okay, this next one is a huge deal, especially for the exam: redlining. This is the illegal practice of basically drawing a red line around a neighborhood on a map and denying financial services to the people who live there, usually based on their race or ethnicity. It's strictly forbidden by the Fair Housing Act, and for good reason. It caused generations of damage to communities, and it's something we're still trying to fix.
Okay, pillar number 3. So we've talked about being honest and being fair, but it doesn't stop there. You also have a massive duty to protect your borrowers, and that means protecting their financial health and their super sensitive personal data. This is a big one.
What's so great about the ability to repay rule, or ATR, is that it's basically just common sense written into law. The whole point is you can't give someone a loan they can't possibly afford to pay back. So you have to do your homework. You have to look at these 8 factors. It's like a full financial checkup. You verify their income, their assets, their job situation. Then you look at all the money going out, the new mortgage payment, any other loans, property taxes, insurance, all of it. You check their debt-to-income ratio and their credit history. You have to look at the whole picture and make a solid, good-faith judgment that, yes, this person can handle this loan.
And while you're doing all that, you're collecting a ton of what's called non-public personal information, or NPI. And really, you become a guardian of this stuff. We're talking about their name, their social security number, their bank account numbers, their credit report. This is the kind of information that, in the wrong hands, can ruin someone's life. It is incredibly sensitive.
So how do you protect it? Well, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or GLBA, has something called the Safeguards Rule, and it gives you a roadmap. First, you need to have someone officially in charge of your security program. Then, you have to constantly be looking for risks to that customer data. Next, you build a program to, safeguard against those risks. Super important here. You have to make sure any service providers you work with are also protecting the data. Your responsibility doesn't just stop with you. And finally, you can't just set it and forget it. You have to keep evaluating and updating your program because the bad guys are always getting smarter.
Okay, on to our last pillar. This is where your duty gets even bigger. It's not just about your client anymore. It's about protecting the entire financial system. This means you have to be on the front lines, actively working to prevent stuff like fraud and money laundering.
I want you to remember one number: $10,000. That's the magic number. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, any cash transaction over 10 grand in a single day has to be reported. You file what's called a Currency Transaction Report, or CTR. It's all about helping the government spot and stop potential money laundering.
Then there's the red flags rule. And this one basically asks you to be a detective. You have to have an actual plan in place to spot the warning signs of identity theft. We're talking about things like a fraud alert on a credit report, documents that look like they've been messed with, or a social security number that doesn't quite match up. Your job is to see these red flags, and then you have to know what to do about them. Honestly, if you forget everything else, remember this quote. It comes straight from the SFA Act itself. It is prohibited to directly or indirectly employ any scheme, device, or artifice to defraud or mislead borrowers or lenders. What does that mean? It means no tricks, no schemes, no deception. Don't mislead anyone, not the borrower, not the lender, not anybody. It's the ultimate line in the sand that you can never, ever cross.
So here's the bottom line. All these rules we've talked about, they're not just a bunch of hoops you have to jump through for your exam. They are the actual framework for being successful. They're what lets you fight for your client, while at the same time upholding the law. It's a balancing act for sure. But nailing that balance, that's the secret to a long, trustworthy, and successful career.
Look, the market is always going to change. Technology will evolve, and you're going to face new challenges that test your judgment. So the real question to leave you with isn't just about what's on the exam. It's this: how are you going to make sure your ethical compass stays pointed true year after year? Because that's the real test. Thanks so much for watching.